And Hiromi, welcome to Design and Dialogue.
Hi, nice
You're
to see you. Yes,
not,
thanks for inviting.
yes,
Yeah,
great to have you here. You're not actually calling in from outer space, but it probably feels like it because it's midnight where you
yeah,
are.
it's midnight in Tokyo. It's very late. Yeah.
So thank you so much for staying up for us. Um, those who are watching, please do let us know where you are calling in from. And also do let us know if you have any questions, just put them in the chat and we'll get back to them at the end. But we have a lot to look at today. So Hiromi
Mhm.
operates online and artistically under the name Sputniko, exclamation point. And I think you'll see a little bit of why she has chosen that sort of nom d'art. It's a very interesting question about how you manage your identity, I suppose, in
Mhm.
analog and digital spheres. But maybe we could get into that just by looking at some of the projects. So do you want to go ahead and start sharing your screen and we can start to
Yes,
learn about
sure.
your practice? Yeah.
Thank you so much, Glenn. So I'll start sharing my screen. Okay. Right. So I'll start with a mini introduction about myself. Oops, sorry. I'm gonna move that there. So hi everyone, it's midnight in Tokyo, but I guess it's 11 a.m. right now in New York. So
That's right.
yes, so like Glenn just introduced me. So my real name is Hiromi Ozaki, but I work under the artist name Sputniko. So that's kind of like my online sort of YouTube, Instagram, Twitter persona. And I work as a designer, performance artist. I'm also a musician. I write music. I make music videos. But I actually have a background in mathematics and computer science. So I was born in Japan and I grew up in Japan. But my parents are both mathematics professors, which really quite naturally, I was really into maths and computer programming. So I studied mathematics in Imperial College in London, maths and computer science. But then while studying there, I started to become kind of more interested in not really only the technology itself, but more about the impacts and influences of the technologies that I'm looking at. And also about aspects of gender inequality happening in the world of technology,
Mm.
especially since I was brought up in Japan, where gender equality is a really big issue. Like it's not equal at all in Japan. So thinking about those issues, I moved on to do a master's in design interactions in Royal College of Art in London. And after graduating from RCA, then some of my works I did from my graduation suddenly became viral on YouTube, social media. I'll talk about them later. And then I showed some of these works in like MoMA, in Talk to Me exhibition, Museum of Contemporary Art in Tokyo. And then I was invited to become a assistant professor at the MIT Media Lab. So I was at the MIT teaching for about 4 years. And I had my own research group called Design Fiction Group. And after 4 years in MIT, I came back to Japan after many years abroad in London, the US. So now I'm an associate professor in Tokyo University of Arts in the design department. And yeah, so I teach, I make works, and I'll show you. And then now I'm going to move on to my projects to show you what kind of works, projects I've been working on. So the first one I like to show you is called the Menstruation Machine. So this is a piece I created while I was at the RCA in London. And I designed a machine that allows biological men to experience the whole process of menstruation. So the process of pain and the bleeding and all that annoying thing that a lot of biological women have to go through during menstruation. So the reason why I designed a machine to allow biological men to experience menstruation, I'm going to talk a little bit over the video. Oops. So the reason why I designed this
Oh, you know what,
machine,
Hiromi,
yeah.
we're not seeing your screen. We're still on the first image for some reason.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay. Oops.
let's
How
try
do
that
I?
again.
Yeah, let's try that again.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Do you see that now?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, that's good. Great. So yeah, so this is a machine that I was talking about. So I designed a machine that allows biological men to experience the whole process of menstruation. The reason why I designed this machine was that, so this was actually back in 2010.
Mm.
And I was, I was thinking that menstruation, like I grew up menstruating, it happens every single month and it's quite a nuisance. Like I'm in pain and PMS is so annoying. But I was frustrated how menstruation was really treated like a taboo in
Mm.
so many places around the world. And especially Japan, like the women are not supposed to talk about menstruation or share their experiences about menstruation. And it was almost treated like it didn't exist. But it was affecting like my performance in university or in work, but I had to hide it. But then more I did research about menstruation, I found out that there were quite actually many ways to solve the issues of menstruations, like contraceptive pills is one way of treating PMS, or IUD, IUS, that's another way of making PMS feel better. But you know, it just felt like all these things was hidden away, not in the media. So I thought, well, what if I designed a machine that allows more people to experience this menstruation or more people to talk about it?
Mm.
Then maybe there's going to be more debate, more interest in the issues surrounding menstruation and women's lives. And maybe we could make the world a better place with better understanding.
Mm.
So because I had a computer science background, I actually built the electronics.
Mm.
So on the device, on the abdomen, there are these electrodes that give this sort of dull pain on your stomach with these dull electricity. And at the back, there's a tank that stores about 80 milliliters of blood. That's the average blood flow that women go through. And over the 5 days, if you wear this machine, the blood flows out between your legs. So it's just the pain and bleeding that the machine simulates. Like
Mm.
actually, there's so many more complicated things that biological women go through, but I thought that's a good enough start. So after designing the machine, so I'm sort of, by that time, I'm actually a musician. So I wrote a song about this machine. And I also created a music video. I'm
Mm.
going to talk over. So I created a music video. And right then, around 2010 was when MySpace culture or YouTube culture was blossoming.
Mm.
So I decided that why don't I put this video on YouTube and try to, because at the time, a lot of my tutors were saying that, oh, why would you want to put it on YouTube? Why would you want to put it in the social media space? But I thought, well, if I wanted more people to talk about this issue, then I wanted to move out of just a museum space and put it out there in social media. And I already, at that time, I was already performing in London as Sputniko, the musician.
Mm.
So I created this video and put it online. So I'll play the music a little bit, shall I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we're not actually seeing the image of the video.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's still the first menstruation machine image. So maybe there's something happening
Oh,
with the screen sharing. I'm not sure.
yeah. I wonder whether let's see.
Maybe better if you don't enter full screen. Maybe that will help.
Yeah, maybe I'll try not full screen and
Yeah.
see. Sorry about that. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, we can see that. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry for all the troubles.
No, it's always like this somehow.
Yes.
A year in, but
Is that, are you, okay, that's good. So I'll play a bit of the video.
そんな顔しちゃって。
So I'm going to talk a little bit over the video. So in the video, so it features a character called Takashi, which I'm playing. And Takashi, so Takashi wants to really sort of understand what it feels like to go through this menstruation process. So he has a desire to understand this process properly, actually. So he decides to build the machine and wears it onto himself, and then goes out in like Tokyo nightlife to hang out with his friends. So it's like a story of Takashi where originally like he enjoys dressing up like as a woman, like through aesthetic, like makeup, fashion, but he decides that's not enough. He wants to dress up biologically, menstruation. So I created the video, posted it online, and suddenly it just went really viral. It was all over the place. And there were people posting comments about the video. And then I think this video was kind of like the first beginning. So a curator, Yuko Hasegawa, saw my video on YouTube, invited me to show in Museum of Contemporary Art. Also Paola Antonelli also saw my video at RCA, invited me to show MoMA. So this work is kind of like, for me, going from a student and suddenly showing in places outside of school.
So this moment of breakthrough,
yes.
One thing that I think will strike everyone, Hiromi, is first of all how ahead of its time this project was in terms of dealing with what we now think of as trans identity or fluid gender identities, which I suppose was in the air to some extent at that point already, but much more so now, arguably. But also I'm struck by the kind of Shakespearean level of complexity in terms of your own identity, because here you are as a female playing a male playing a female, also being an actor, designer, artist, musician at the same time, and constructing this very, very elaborate system for your own persona. And then of course that gets refracted through social media and online and YouTube, as you said. So I guess what I want to ask is sort of what was that like, and how much of that was intentional as a kind of stage managing of identity, and how much of it sort of just happened organically?
It was actually quite intentional for me. So for me, I dressed up as a biological male who wanted to dress up as a biological female. So I was really interested in blurring that gender boundaries to talk about this issue of menstruation, which often seemed very hidden within the biological female sphere. It was treated often like not existing in the society. So it was very intentional. And then for me, I wanted to experiment with this new medium of YouTube, like MySpace, social media, pop culture. And yeah, that's another thing, is like influencer culture is quite common now, but I think at the time it was still very fledgling. So I thought, well, what if a speculative designer is also a social media influencer? And then, so it was like a lot of experiments put in one. But then actually, after the video went really quite viral, Vogue Japan awarded me Vogue Japan Woman of the Year for making this work. So I thought, like, maybe I managed to infiltrate that pop culture space.
Yeah.
So I had to sort of think about, so if I'm designing for debate, designing to stimulate discussions, well, why don't I infiltrate that space of pop culture, social media space? Because, you know, there's a big audience where people are really talking about lots of issues.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't expect to expand this much, but at the time it was quite intentional. Yeah.
Right, right. Sort of the dream of the speculative designer coming true in a way that rarely
Yeah.
happens, actually. But
Yeah.
just one last comment on this project is that one of the brilliant things about it is that often the organic gendered body is considered to be sort of um, the barrier to fluid identity. You know, so from a conservative point of view, often it's said, well, actually they're just men and they're just women, and so you might feel trans or fluid or whatever, but you know, nature won't let you. So a kind of reactionary argument against that that idea of identity flux. But your introduction of this imaginative technology overcomes that barrier and says, well, if you wanted to experience menstruation as a man, you could, and I'll give you the tools to do that. So it's also, it's even operating at a more fundamental critical level than just the play of identity that we usually experience, because you're going all the way to the level of the body.
Yeah, like I felt like there's so many things that the design and technology could do to, but it's actually, I think it is possible if we really, like, there's so many things, understanding that could happen through that, using tech and science to blur the boundaries, to encourage more understanding. And I felt like menstruation or also pregnancy, like there's some biological things that I felt like were creating interesting divides in society. So that's why, actually, I was imagining about this device since I was studying in Imperial College. So while I was studying maths and computer science, I was often annoyed because I was in a class, and as you can imagine, computer science class was very male dominated. So there were about 100 people in the class and about 9 female students. And I felt like, so like I obviously when I'm going through my period and struggling with PMS, I felt like a lot of my classmates didn't understand anything, or didn't really particularly want to understand how it felt. And then when I did a lot of research about technology and biology, I started to uncover many things, like there are many, so like women's health, like menstruation, pregnancy, is very often under researched, undercovered.
Right.
Or medication to help women's health issues is often, especially in Japan, contraceptive pills were approved in 1999. That's 40 years after the United States, very, very late in Japan. Whereas Viagra was approved in 6 months in Japan, like very, very fast. And so like you see in Japan, like pills take 40 years, Viagra takes 6 months. So you think technology and science progresses equally for everyone. Well, that's not the case at all. Like gender inequality, racial inequality really happens in tech and science. So through the lenses of menstruation, I was actually feeling that being a student. So when I went to RCA, I thought, I have to make this, I have to design this machine so more people would understand it and talk about it. So
Well, yeah, perhaps we could go on to the next
yeah,
part.
yeah.
Just to say, I think it's so interesting how you're using cyborg technology of a kind to interrogate precisely those questions of gender asymmetry in our technological realm, pharmaceutical realm, etc.
Yeah. I think I might go into like more biological realm if I try to do the same now, but I'll move on to the next project because I mentioned a little bit about Japan's gender inequality in medicine and science. So this is a project called the Tokyo Medical University for Rejected Women. And this is in collaboration with Tomomi Nishizawa. She's on the right. So we created a completely fictional university, sort of like black humor university, in reaction to this very recent scandal that happened in 2018. I don't know if some of the audience still remember or know about this. So in Japan, they found that many medical schools up until 2018, they were deliberately deducting points of female applicants' exam scores to limit the women studying medicine. And they found out 2018, not 1958. And the excuse that the university said was, well, even if we educate women to become doctors, they get married and have children and quit. So we thought, what's the point in educating women? Which infuriated me. Many women in Japan are probably around, not just women, really. I think infuriated many people around the world. So I was furious. And this is another reason why things like the pills take so long to get approved in Japan, because people in power in medicine, tech, politics, very male dominated. So things like that happen. So in reaction to this scandal, we created a fake university that accepts women who were rejected from the traditional Japanese medical schools. And this is sort of a cynical take, saying, well, if Japan loves elite male doctors, then why don't we get together and build the perfect elite male doctor with the rejected women? And we pack them up into box and deliver these elite male doctors all over Japan to improve Japanese medicine. So this is, a doctor being delivered. That's another doctor. We're creating global leaders for Japanese medicine. And we created this sort of cheesy university brochure explaining student life being here. And we did this school opening performance in Tokyo, which we got many students, both women and also men wanting to be the elite male doctor. And then we did this open campus exhibition. I'll show a little bit of this. Yeah. So I can play a bit of a cheesy university video.
Yeah.
Okay. It's super cheesy, but I'll play a bit. It's very short.
The music is so perfect.
Yeah.
皆さんこんにちは。ようこそ東京原点女子大へ。学長のスプツニコです。
理事長の西澤智美です。本大学は最先端のテクノロジーを
Can you read the subtitles?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
活躍の場を提供する学校です。医学の進歩を第一に考え、学び、実践できることを約束します。
しかし女性の皆さん、今の世の中が求めているのは男性ドクターです。昨今の医大受験でも女性受験者だけが一律で減点されたりしてましたよね。
医学に性別なんて関係ないのになぜでしょうね。
全くもって理解不能です。が、とにかく男性ドクターは素晴らしいみたいなんです。ならこの大学で最高のエリート男性ドクターを作っちゃいましょう。この学校にはエリートドクターになりたい男性たちが毎日のように集まります。 生徒たちは温かい歓迎で彼らを迎え入れます。集まった一般男性たちを生徒が最先端技術を駆使してエリートドクターに再構築します。手術後は快適なお部屋で回復をお待ちしてもらいます。派遣が決まるとエリートドクターとなった男性たちは箱に梱包され、ドローンによってさまざまな病院へ運ばれます。エリートドクターによって世の中の医学はさらに発展していくことでしょう。
自分は男性に負けない医者になるためにずっと勉強してきました。なのになんで第一志望の大学に入れなかったのか疑問でしょうがないです。なんでですかね？点数下げられてたりして。でも今ではこの大学で良かったと思ってますよ。自分の作った男性ドクターが活躍してくれた時はすごくやりがいを感じますし、みんな幸せになれるんだから素晴らしいですよね。
そうですね。毎日充実していてすごく楽しいです。私は一度大学受験を失敗したんですけど、浪人して悩んでいた時、この大学を知って自分の居場所はここしかないと思いました。女性でもこんなに医療に貢献できるんだって希望が持てました。これからもよりエリートな男性ドクターを作れるように頑張っていきたいと思います。
さあ、あなたもこの大学に入学して私たちと共に男性ドクターが活躍する平和な世界を目指しましょう。
あなたに会える日を楽しみにしています。
Yeah, and I actually got a complaint letter from the medical school after publishing this work, which was quite interesting because I don't know, like they apologized in front of the news media, but
Yeah.
I don't know, to complain about this work is maybe they don't understand. But anyhow, if you're interested in reading the university brochure, you could actually purchase it on Amazon. So if you take a photograph of this QR code, it gets you the link, and there's an English version, and I think it's about $1.99, and all profits go to the NPO, Plan International, to help women's education. So that's yeah. If you're interested in entering the school, I don't know, or funding the school, yeah.
So one question for you, Hiromi. I mean, the satire is so brilliant and kind of acidic. Like you really, really, particularly the aspect of the speculative scenario where the perfect male doctors are being bundled off in drones. You know, it's just so right on the money in terms of, you know, mocking their presumption of superiority. I guess the question I have is maybe one more about process. So when you're developing a speculative scenario like this that has such an elaborate infrastructure of your own creativity, where you're studying presumably the typical infomercial or pamphlet language, and you're sort of appropriating that design language and bringing it into your own practice, what is that process like for you, that sort of research and execution process?
The process itself, like appropriating this sort of cheesy university video, for me, one thing is my mother's British, my father's Japanese, but I grew up in Tokyo, where sort of manga, pop culture is surrounding me all the time. So for me, appropriating my work in this sort of music video, pop culture, or this cheesy video is quite a natural flow. But then another thing is I think I enjoy humor and also infiltrating this pop culture. So wrapping sort of my satire critique into this kind of format to present to people. And also another thing about process, both this work and Menstruation Machine, is that I heavily used Twitter to gather my production team. So Menstruation Machine, I was a student with very little budget, but I went on Twitter and said, I have this idea, I made this machine. Can you help me create a video? So I found like a fashion stylist and a video camera guy. And also in this project, I found a lot of people trying to help me create the work together. So I found like all these people, the models in the photographs, and also people doing like the writing and editing the brochure. They were recruited online. So I often recruit people online. Like some of the next few videos I'm going to show you later have about 100 people running in the video. They're all my Twitter followers that I gathered. Yeah.
That's fascinating. So it's in a way the production domain and the consumption domain of the work is both online. So it's like it's almost like you're completing a circuit.
Yeah. Production and consumption. I'm very social media native, so I try to get people involved in the production, and then I distribute it online. Yeah. So
well, maybe let's go on to the next project.
Yes. Yeah. So I might move. So there's Moonwalk Machine, but then I might talk about Red Silk of Fate before that. So Red Silk of Fate, this is a project where I'm more. This is quite. So I showed you some projects talking about gender and tech. This one is more about the relationship between biotechnology, emerging biotechnology, and our ideas of mythology and fantasies. So today I struggled to select the work to show, but so I do several collaborations with genetic engineers and biologists, and this is one of them. So I don't know how many of you have heard of this Asian mythology of Red String of Fate. And this is a very well-known mythology in Japan and China. In Chinese, it's Huan Xian, and in Japanese, it's called Unmei no Akaito. Like practically everyone knows about this mythology. And it says that two people destined to meet each other romantically have this invisible red string in between them. So this is this familiar mythology we all grow up with, and we see it referenced again and again in films and comics. And so in this work, I was interested in sort of looking at biotech and working together with scientists to see if science, often seen as something that is going against mythology or breaking mythology, or can science actually create something that we only thought existed in mythology or fantasy? So create a future mythology. So for this work, I was collaborating with Hideki Sezutsu, is a professor in Japan. And I'm going to show you this video. It's quite, for me, it was quite shocking surprising when I first saw it. So this is a video of genetically engineered silkworm. So you can see that the eyes are glowing red or glowing green. Well, these eyes are glowing because these silkworms have genes of a red glowing coral or genes of a green glowing jellyfish inserted into their genes. So Professor Sezutsu developed this technology to genetically engineer silkworms. And it's not just glowing like eyes, also the silk that they produce glows red and green. And actually you could add so many different kinds of DNA gene into the silkworm. For example, you could add a gene that produces substances close to spider web, which is very strong substance. So the silkworms produce something that's half silk, half spider web, so which is a silk that's very super strong. So when I first read about this research, I was really, surprised to see it. And I filmed this silkworm using my iPhone, and it just feels like science fiction. I couldn't believe it was happening in front of my eyes. So I talked to Professor Sezutsu. Well, like using this technology, like well, can you actually make so many different kinds of silk? Like, what if actually you add a gene of a red glowing coral to make the silk glow red? And can you add a gene that produces oxytocin? So oxytocin is a hormone produced when humans are hugging or in love. It's called a social bonding hormone. Well, can you add a gene that produces oxytocin and then glows red, and make a silkworm that produces a red glowing silk with this oxytocin? Something a little bit like this mythology of Red Stringer Fate that we all grew up with, we all heard about. Like, can your technology actually produce something like that? And his answer was, Sputniko, actually, yes, we can design that. So after we had this discussion, it only took, Professor said it took 8 months to actually engineer a silkworm to produce a red silk containing oxytocin. So completely, something I thought was completely mythical, like mythology or Red Stringer Fate, is actually designed in just a few months. It just right like that. So yeah, like I was, wow, like surprised in that we're living in that kind of times already. Like so biology is like a new medium of imagination and design and all, like so from that, actually I decided that, well, what if I try to create this new future biology, biotech mythology based on this Red Stringer Fate? So at the time I wanted to write a story about this character. She's called Tamaki. So she's a genetic engineer in the lab, and she has a big crush on Sachihiko, her lab colleague. But she feels that Sachihiko doesn't notice her crush, and maybe the red string fate is not in between them. So she decides, actually, what if I genetically engineer and design my own red stringer fate myself? So she designs it, she makes it, the red stringer fate, and she sews it into her special scarf. She wraps it around herself and runs out to meet Sachihiko, the love of her life. And the whole story, because it's a mythology, I was reading a lot of Japanese mythology, Chinese mythology, and oftentimes very crazy things happen in the end. So it has a bit of that craziness happening, storyline. So I wrote the script, I wrote the music. I'm also playing in the film as Sachihiko, her love interest. So I'll show the video of this. That's me.
い。私ももう大人だし、オキシトシンくらいで恋が叶うなんて、恋はそんな簡単な話じゃないだなんて、そりゃ分かってるんですけど、でもそんなことやってみないと分かんないじゃないですか。失敗は成功のもとだって施術教授も
That's a
言ったじゃ
real
ないですか。
Sezutsu
だから
professor.
私作っちゃったんです。ねえ、新しい神話一緒に作ろうよ。そうしそう愛ないとは言わないで、高鳴る野望は止まんない。今後当然なんても言わないで、運命なんて結果オーライ。この日を待ってた。愛してるベイビー、好きだってtell me、進化論ベイビー、私海のようざなみみたいに愛してるベイビー。
Okay. I would love to show the whole film, but I'm gonna stop it there. But you can watch it on YouTube. So, but all those people running there, everyone I got from Twitter. So
Yeah.
I said, I'm filming this day. Can you all be in my film? And they all came and ran with me. So anyhow, another aspect I wanted to explore in this work was that just the idea of relationship between mythology and biology is quite different in Asia, I think. Because at the time I was at the MIT, so I was living in the United States, and I felt like the Western perspective, Asian perspective, quite different. Like, oops, I wonder why that's so in Asia, especially in Japan. So you can see I was filming that in a shrine with, and they were quite open to this sort of idea of this new mythology. And actually we built a real shrine of this future biomythology in, I don't know if you've been to Naoshima. This is a famous art island in Japan. So Naoshima, so in this Naoshima complex, there's another island called Teshima, which is about 20-minute boat ride. So this is a commission from Naoshima, the Fukutake family. So together with the Shinto shrine in the area, we built this future shrine where people can make wishes based on this red string of fate about relationship, people. So this was like a collaboration with scientists and making like a film, a future mythology, and actually building a place of worship. So quite interesting process for me. Yeah.
Hiromi, let me ask you one question about this project, and then maybe, because we're now running a little short on time, maybe you could finish with one last project for us.
Sure.
But about this one, I wanted to ask you, when designers engage in these speculative fictions that are about the future, I noticed that they often appeal to mythology and to the deep past as part of that calculation. So it's almost like to project out into tomorrow, we need to reach back to yesterday at the same time. And this seems like a very good example of that. So you're appealing to this very, very conventional legend and iconography, and then placing it into this kind of hilariously contemporary imagined context. Do you feel like that's a kind of characteristic pattern in your own work, or what you see in speculative design practice generally, to use mythology as a pretext?
Mythology pretext. I think for me, like, I tend to, so the music video aesthetics that I have of pop culture aesthetics is quite like something I've been working on since I was a student from Menstruation Machine days. So in terms of that kind of output, I think speculative design area, I'm not sure if there are that many designers working in a similar approach. I'm not sure. But yeah, mythology, yeah, like there are some artists working like about this theme of mythology too, but I think especially biology, like the topic of biology, touches our ideas of mythology, conception mythology a lot, and that could probably be the reason why it's often touched on.
Well, that's
And
interesting.
yeah, so I think
I suppose that mythology is also such a huge part of Japanese pop culture. Well, pop culture generally, but maybe especially in Japan. So it's already informing the world of manga and music video that you're drawing on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of manga, science fiction have a lot of mythology references in them.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I was quite, yeah, in this work, it's quite, like, to be honest, like for me, like this work is actually a complicated work for me emotionally, because like yeah, I was in a way like because I designed this new red Silk of Fate, but to go through that process, I actually worked with a scientist to actually design a new living thing, like a new silkworm.
Right.
And that's like actually one controversial step to take as a speculative designer, to actually design something. And then like, so when I was thinking about how to discuss this world, the present and the future we're living in, where designers like myself can work with a scientist and design a new living thing, and also possibly something we thought only exists in fantasy, I think the language to discuss it is so I'm often in between like the Japanese pop culture, the British pop culture, and I understand the difference between, I feel like sometimes Asian culture and Asian, especially Japanese religion, is very different from Western viewpoint of religion and science. Like, I think both good or bad, it's hard to say, positive and negative way. Japanese religion, mythology is quite open, like not very critical of technology and so much. Whereas I think in Western religion, oftentimes, like for example, the stem cell, like ES stem cell, was forbidden for, research has been forbidden for a long time through concerns of the Christian church. So like religion and science, technology is often clashing in the Western viewpoints. Asian viewpoints rarely clashes. It's kind of coexisting together, like not. So I was interested in that difference personally, and that's kind of why it was so easy and natural for me to build this shrine in Japan, working together with like Shinto shrine. So for me, that difference was very interesting. But then I did feel like when I showed it in like a Western audience, some people would misunderstand this openness, like it's like maybe it's too open, too pop culture to talk about this issue of mythology and science. So I did meet some very harsh moments where I had to really I had to really like talk about the process behind it and like the struggles behind this work. But it's still like I still struggle to really like describe. For me, like, I think this work was a lot about designing and making and also exploring at the same time. Like I don't have an answer when I start making it, but yeah, it was difficult work.
Well, thank you for talking about it so
Yeah.
openly, and it's fascinating to hear those observations. I guess, one thing that strikes me is you're doing two things simultaneously that maybe Western designers would at least think hard before doing, one of which is stepping into the domain of genetic modification, and the other is stepping into the domain of religion, which are two arenas that I guess conventionally, I'm sure there are exceptions, but designers might be hesitant to enter those spheres, and you're doing them at the same time, and
Doing
also
it at the same
creating
time.
this kind of very entertaining and fantastic narrative at the same time, and also casting yourself as the romantic lead. So it's very bold.
It's a lot of things
That's a lot
packed in one. So this, for me, I felt like, well, I put in a lot of issues and challenges in one. So yeah, like you said, it was a big project, but a challenging project for me.
I guess we should finish up with one last project, maybe, because we just have a few minutes.
So there's like the Moonwalk Machine, and there's the Nanohana Heels, and then there's the new company. What do you recommend?
I would love to talk about the new company and what you're doing now, because I think it's a nice contrast. Yeah, so let's hear about that.
Okay, so I'll talk about the new company. If you're interested in Moonwalk Machine, it's on YouTube on my or Sputniko.com. So my new company. So from 2020 to present, I actually created a new company, a femtech startup. So I think a lot of people know me as like speculative designer, artist, creating work, showing in like exhibitions, museums, but suddenly I reached a point when I thought, what if I create a startup that can be kind of a speculative design in itself. So a new company that is a new service, a new product. So I actually created a company that provides access to contraceptive pills, egg freezing, fertility treatments for big Japanese corporations. And this is because like gender inequality in technology has been a really big interest since the time when I was making Menstruation Machine. And I felt like more people needed to know about contraceptive pills, egg freezing, fertility treatments, and there needs to be more support. And especially in Japan, I felt like it was quite behind compared to the United States and Europe. So I created this vision company, and I managed to get 1.6 million US dollar invested in our seed funding. So now I am a CEO, entrepreneur, as well as being a designer, and it's a new challenge, but it's a good challenge for me. And we started a trial service in April, and we got several companies using our service, like Deloitte, the consulting agency, or Paula, a Japanese makeup company, like several companies. So this is my new challenge. So it's kind of speculative designer creating a startup. And I think this is like another thing shall I just keep on talking about the reason behind?
Well, I'm particularly interested in the question of transferable skills in that context. So how much of your training as a speculative designer has been helpful in this context? You're actually trying to start a company, and how much of it is maybe unhelpful?
Yes. There's a lot I can talk about that. So when I was looking at like this startup, I think startup culture, especially the last 10 years, has evolved a lot. And so I've been making works. The process of myself making works was like I would create with a vision and an idea, and I would propose the idea, and I might get funding, commission, and then I'll gather my production team, and maybe like I take about several months to achieve the idea, and like the production process started to feel a bit similar to like some IT startup companies operate, because it felt like some of tech startups, both IT and biology, like it would start with a vision of the future, like maybe the future could be like this or be like that, and then the vision attracts funding, attracts the people, and then these entrepreneurs almost create this new future from the vision. So it felt like it was almost like speculative design, but kind of making it come in reality. So it's like designing, what if the future's like this, what if the future's like that, but actually getting funding and making it happen.
Yeah.
And I felt like, well, maybe I could, like, it feels like, maybe, what if I try that? What if I could, it felt like maybe I can see what, this is a new challenge experiment for me, but I thought, but the big challenge is that running a company is creating a service. You need to make a service that many people understand and it's usable for many people. But like, for example, my past works, like they're more like going into themes that are very particular. Like, so I'm more used to like being very like particular, like sort of radical ideas, but making a service is sort of expanding that radicalness into more understandable for many people. But it's an interesting challenge.
It's so unusual for a figure who I might describe as avant-garde, for lack of a better term, to shift over into that more pragmatic context. And I realize this is a fairly new experience for you still, and I'm sure you're still evaluating it.
Yes.
But it also feels like maybe if speculative design were to take itself seriously, this would not be, maybe not the only destination, but certainly we should expect to see this happening more often, because a speculative design really has contributions to make. And if there's an intelligence and capability built into that, then it should be tested in real world situations, which is exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, like that's exactly, sorry, the lights went off. So,
Oh,
so I don't know why.
It is late there. So.
Okay, so that's exactly the reason why I created it. So I felt like the future that speculative design is talking about was coming closer and closer. I thought, like AI and biotech is developing so quickly. Like the future was nearing us, and
interesting.
Just sort of, and you know, in speculative design, we often say design for debate or design to create discussion. But I also felt like the quality of debate and discussion that was happening on social media space was deteriorating. Like when I presented Menstruation Machine in 2010, there were quite interesting debates happening on Twitter or Facebook about speculative design, like Menstruation Machine. But as more and more like social media, the debates and discussion happening in social media, I think the quality is becoming it's becoming more chaotic, and I think the debate is expanding, but it's sort of people only talking with people that understand each other. Like these filter bubbles are happening, and there's like QAnon and like anti-vaccine conspiracies, and so I thought, like, is this the right thing for me to be doing, like designing for debate? But it feels like the debate space is, especially online, is becoming different, very, very different.
Thin and brittle.
So, but then it felt like these bio startups or internet technology startups or AI, like something, a company, a real product, a real service can actually have a power to kind of design, power to sort of stir people's thinking or the way they're living or their lifestyle in a different way. So that's kind of the reason why I shifted from my conventional approach to creating a new company. Yeah.
Fascinating. So Hiromi, may I suggest we come out of the share screen now, just so we can
Yes,
see a little better
yes,
for this
sure.
last bit. And I'll just maybe we have had a couple of questions come in, and maybe I'll just sort of put them together. So we just have one last question. But first, I want to say that I really appreciate the point that you just made, that some of the intentions of speculative design to create a space for critical debate maybe aren't as applicable right now, because right now we have maybe more debate than we can stand, but what we really need is thoughtful follow through on great ideas. So I think it's so inspiring that you're actually, you know, living up to that and committing yourself to what is no doubt quite a challenging project.
Challenge.
Company in Cradle. So we had a great question from Tariq Kaduri, and also another one from my co-host Stephen Burks. And basically they're both questions about the use of speculative design and then this total design process, as Stephen calls it. Tariq is asking about your own motivation and whether speculative design sort of helps you follow through the project and gives you maybe a kind of inspiring, I suppose, or he describes it as creative confidence. And Stephen is asking about it more in the teaching context, I suppose another aspect of the same question. So just to conclude here, can you just say a little bit about the use of fiction and narrative and speculation as a motor or a kind of engine in the creative process, both for you and perhaps for your students as well?
My students.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's Stephen's question, right?
Yeah.
They've been teaching. Yes. So when I'm teaching in Tokyo University of Arts right now, so a lot of my students are young Japanese students. So I do have a class where I teach them I teach them sort of speculative design, but create a music video output. So they design something, they do research, but then they try to use this language, which they're very comfortable with because they're watching like TikTok and Instagram.
Sure.
So that's an interesting class we have, which is going to start next week again. So it's like a 1 month long class. And I like to encourage students to work with a medium that they're very used to. And something, I think they're very like they enjoy it more, and it comes very naturally to them, and I have a lot to learn from them if they use like even newer platforms or methods. So yeah, it works really well for me in the class.
Yeah.
And shall I move on to the next question?
Well, I think unfortunately we probably have to close there, Hiromi, because we're a little over time. But I think that's actually a really nice place to leave it, because in essence, what you're suggesting is that this is where the new generation is anyway, and so design needs to meet them more than halfway and work with the same kind of tools and worlds that they inhabit already. So
yeah, I respect their knowledge, and being a student, I was like that. Like I wanted to use a new platform, so I learned from the students as well. So
yeah. Well, yes, I mean, all the best teachers do.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for coming on the program, for staying up so late, and for your beautiful, powerful work. It's been such an inspiring hour, so I really appreciate it, Hiromi Sputniko. And let me just announce that I'll be back next week in the hosting chair, and we'll be speaking. This is actually the first of two sessions that we're doing in relation to the exhibition called A New Realism that I've curated for Friedman Benda. So next week we'll be having Tanya Aguniga on the program, and then the week after that we'll be having Ebe Tanifa Barale. So please come back for those two talks. And that's it for today. Hiromi, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Glenn.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Good night.
And we'll see you all again next week. Thanks.
Thank you.